A submarine aircraft carrier is a submarine equipped with aircraft for observation or attack missions. These submarines saw the most extensive use during World War II, although their operational significance remained rather small. The most famous of them were the Japanese I-400 class submarine and the French submarine Surcouf, although small numbers of similar craft were built for other nations' navies as well. Most operational submarine aircraft carriers, with the exception of the I-400 and AM classes, used their aircraft for reconnaissance and observation. This is in contrast to the typical surface aircraft carrier, whose main function is serving as a base for offensive aircraft. Early history. Germany was the first nation to experiment with submarine aircraft carriers. Initiated by the Imperial German Naval Air Service Commander Oberleutnant Zersiloth von Arnold de la Perrière, who commanded a unit of 2 Friedrichshafen F-29 reconnaissance seaplanes in Zeebrugge. One of the first U-boats to arrive at the Zeebrugge base was Captain Lieutenant Walther Forstmann's M2, which was to play the role of submarine aircraft carrier. The unarmed FF-29 seaplanes were modified to carry 26.5-pound bombs. On the 25th of December 1914, one of the newly modified aircraft flew across the English Channel and up the River Thames, dropping bombs on the outskirts of London, although they caused only minor damage. Although pursued by British fighters, it returned to base safely. On this first bombing mission, it was apparent that the aircraft suffered more from a lack of range. Encouraged by this success, Arnold and Forstmann theorized that they could increase the range by carrying the aircraft off the British coast on the deck of submarine in a takeoff position, then launching an aircraft by partially submerging, allowing the seaplane to float off. On the 15th of January 1915, U-12 left Zeebrugge with a single bomb-armed FF-29 on its deck. The submarine left the harbour, seemingly dwarfed by the 53 feet 2 in wingspan of the biplane, which stretched almost one-third of the 188 feet length of the small coastal patrol submarine. As soon as U-12 passed the safety of the breakwater, however, heavy swells threatened to damage the aircraft and Forstmann ordered the immediate launch of the seaplane. The sub's forward tanks were flooded, and despite the pitching of the boat, the seaplane floated off the deck without much difficulty and took off. Arnold originally intended to rendezvous with the sub, but decided against it. After gaining altitude, Arnold left for the British coast, which he apparently flew along undetected before returning to Zeebrugge. Although the aircraft had been carried out to sea and had safely floated off the submarine's deck, it was obvious improvements were needed in the procedure and setup. Arnold and Forstmann proposed further experiments to the German Naval Command, but were vetoed as the project was considered impractical. The plans were reinvestigated in 1917 in the hope that they would increase the striking power of new German subs such as the long-range cruiser type Unterseeboote, which were to be equipped with small scouting seaplanes that could be assembled and dismantled on board and stored in special compartments on deck. But the idea was abandoned as the war came to an end. Two of the aircraft designs created for that purpose were the biplane Hansa Brandenburg W-20 and low-wing monoplane Luftfahrzeuggesellschaft L.F.G. Stralsund V-19. The first type was designed in 1917 for use aboard the cruiser submarines that never went into service. The British also experimented with the aircraft-carrying submarine concept when HMS E-22 was fitted out in a manner similar to the German U-boat, but for the purpose of intercepting German airships as they crossed the North Sea. It was capable of launching 2 Sopwith Schneider floatplanes in 1916. However, just as in the German experiment, the aircraft were carried unprotected on the deck and the submarine was unable to submerge without losing them. Between the wars, France's Surcouf was a French submarine ordered in December 1927, launched the 18th of October 1929, and commissioned May 1934. At 4,000 tons displacement submerged, Surcouf was the largest submarine in the world at the start of World War II. Her short wartime career is laced with controversy and conspiracy theories. Surcouf was designed as an underwater cruiser, intended to seek and engage in surface combat. For the first part of that mission, it carried an observation float plane in a hangar built into the after part of the conning tower. For the second part, it was armed with not only 12 torpedo tubes but also a twin 8-inch gun turret forward of the conning tower. The guns were fed from a magazine holding 60 rounds and controlled by a director with a 16 feet 6 in rangefinder, mounted high enough to view a 7 miles horizon. In theory, the observation plane could direct fire out to the gun's 15 miles maximum range. Anti-aircraft cannons and machine guns were mounted on the top of the hangar. Italy. The Reggio Marina ordered the Ettore Fiera Mosca of submarine with a waterproof hangar for a small reconnaissance seaplane in the late 1920s. In 1928, Macchi and Piaggio each received orders for suitable aircraft, which resulted in the Macchi M53 and the Piaggio P8, but the program was cancelled, and the submarine's hangar was removed in December 1931, before Ettore Fiera Mosca was delivered. Japan. The Japanese applied the concept of the submarine aircraft carrier extensively, starting with the J2 class I-6 and the J3 class of 1937-38. Altogether 42 submarines were built with the capability to carry floatplanes, one such vessel being the I-8, United Kingdom after the loss of the heavy gun-carrying HMS M1 and the Washington Naval Treaty, which restricted the armament of vessels which were not capital ships. The remaining M-class submarines were converted to other uses. By 1927, HMS M2 had entered service with a waterproof hangar for a Panalpito seaplane with folding wings, which could be launched and recovered with the aid of a derrick. In October 1928, she was fitted with a hydraulic catapult which allowed the seaplane to be launched from a ramp on the forward casing. The submarine and her plane could then provide reconnaissance ahead of the fleet, submerging when threatened. HMS M2 herself was lost in 1932, and plane-launching submarines were abandoned by the Royal Navy. United States. The United States began studying the concept in 1922 when two Casper U-1 seaplanes were purchased from Germany for evaluation at Anacostia Naval Station. One aircraft was later lost during an exhibition flight in 1923, but they provided useful technical information. The United States Navy ordered 6 Cox Clemen XS-1S and 6 Martin MS-1S, both small seaplanes that, like the Casper U-1, could be disassembled easily. Both were tested aboard the S-1 during October and November 1923. Later, Cox-Clem built the improved XS-2 model, and Laning built the XSL, but the Navy had lost interest in the concept by then. Problems with launching and recovering the aircraft, and the limited military value caused interest in the concept to wane. News that the British submarine M2 had sunk during trials in 1933, and damage to the XSL during testings on the sheltered waters of the Anacostia River ended further U.S. Navy development. World War II. Germany. The Kriegsmarine also started development of submarines capable of launching aircraft and ordered 4 very large cruiser U-boats in early 1939. These boats were to be twice as large as any existing U-boat and were to have had a crew of 110 while carrying a single Arado R-231 floatplane, but were cancelled at the outbreak of war later that year. Although not strictly an aircraft, some U-boats carried the Focke-Achilles Fa-330. It was a type of rotary wing kite, known as a gyroglider or rotor kite. They were towed behind German U-boats during World War II. Type 9D2 Monsun. Another German long-range U-boat was the Type 9D2 Monsun, used in the Indian Ocean and Far East area based in Penang. To aid such submarines, the observation autogyro kite Focke-Achilles Fa-330 Barkstelze was developed. This was used in the Indian Ocean and sporadically in the southern Atlantic, but its use hindered the submarine's ability to submerge quickly. The Flettner FL-282 Colibri reconnaissance helicopter was also planned to be used from long-range submarines. This single-seat helicopter was manufactured of welded steel tubing and was sized so that it could be stowed with rotor blades and landing gear, removed in a 5.9 feet diameter by 18 feet long pressured hangar on the U-boat's deck. The FL-282 Colibri was never deployed on a German submarine. Japan. The Japanese applied the concept of the submarine aircraft carrier extensively. Altogether 47 submarines were built with the capability to carry seaplanes. Most IJN submarine aircraft carriers could carry only one aircraft, though a few types could carry two, and the giant I-400 class submarines could carry three. B-1 type. The B-1 type submarines were the most numerous type of submarines of the Imperial Japanese Navy during World War II. In total, 20 were made, starting with number I-15, which became the name of the series. These submarines were fast, had a very long range, and carried a single Yokosuka E-14Y seaplane, located in a hangar in front of the conning tower, which was launched by catapult. The series was rather successful, especially at the beginning of the war. In 1942, I-26 crippled the aircraft carrier US Saratoga. I-19, on the 15th of September 1942, fired 6 torpedoes at the carrier US Wasp, 2 of which hit the carrier and crippled it, with the remaining torpedoes damaging the battleship US North Carolina and the destroyer O'Brien, which sank later. I-25 conducted the only aerial bombings ever on the continental United States in September 1942, when an aircraft launched from it dropped 2 incendiary bombs on a forest near the town of Brookings, Oregon. AM-type. The AM-type submarine was a large seaplane-carrying submarine, with a hangar space for 2 aircraft. These giant submarines were originally of the A2 type, but the design was revised after construction started so that they could carry a second aircraft. The seaplanes were to be the Aichi M6A1 bomber carrying 1,760 pounds bombs. The range and speed of these submarines was remarkable, but their underwater performance was compromised, making them easy targets. I-13 was sunk on the 16th of July 1945 by the destroyer escort US Lawrence C. Taylor, an aircraft action from the escort carrier US Anzio about 550 miles east of Yokosuka. I-14 surrendered at sea at the end of the war, and was later scrapped. Sentoku type. The I-400 class submarine displaced 6,500 tons and was over 400 feet long, 3 times the size of ordinary submarines. It had a figure-8 hull shape for additional strength to handle the on-deck hangar for housing the 3 Aichi M6A Seirin aircraft. In addition, It had 3 anti-aircraft guns and a large deck gun as well as 8 torpedo tubes from which they could fire the Long Lance, the largest, longest-ranged and most deadly torpedo in use at the time. 3 of the Sentoku were built, the I-400, I-401, and I-402. Each had 4 3,000 horsepower engines and enough fuel to go around the world 1.5 times, more than enough to reach the United States from either direction. The submarines were also able to carry 3 SE-Iran aircraft, each carrying a 1,760 pounds bomb 650 miles at 360 miles per hour. Its name was combination of SE and Ran, literally storm out of a clear sky, because the Americans would not know they were coming. It had a wingspan of 40 feet and a length of 38 feet. To fit the aircraft into the hangar, the wings of the aircraft were folded back, the horizontal stabilizers folded down, and the top of the vertical stabilizer folded over so the overall profile of the aircraft was within the diameter of its propeller. A crew of 4 could prepare and get all 3 airborne in 45 minutes, launching them with a 120 feet catapult on the foredeck of the giant submarine. Post-war studies. The U.S. Navy produced sketch designs of rather fanciful submarine aircraft carriers in 1946 and 1952. The 1946 study had a projected hull, classification symbol of SSV, and was initially envisioned to carry 2 XA-2J Super Savage bombers for strategic nuclear strike, or 4 F-2H Banshee fighters. Various watertight hangar and takeoff landing ramp configurations produced potential lengths ranging from 600 feet to 750 feet. The latter with double the aircraft for a surface displacement of 34,000 tons. The 1952 study was slightly more realistic, carrying 3 F-2YC seaplane fighters, with a topside launching ramp for rough seas. This would still be a large submarine, projected at 460 feet long and 9,000 tons submerged, with a 70,000 horsepower nuclear power plant to achieve 28 knots. A more economical plan was also conceived to convert World War II fleet submarines to carry a seaplane version of the A-4D Skyhawk in a similar manner to the Regulus missile-equipped SSGs, using hydroskis for takeoff as the Sea-Dart did. Future designs. No submarine aircraft carriers remain in use, but the concept reappears periodically. The ability to make a stealth attack has an allure, but sustained air operations largely negate the advantage of being submersible, and the size limitations preclude sizable sustained aerial operations. Furthermore, any submarine large enough to be useful would be vulnerable to detection and counterattack. Combined with the cost for such a specialized vessel, it is unlikely that any navy would consider the construction worthwhile. There are, however, several projects to develop UAV launch and recovery capabilities. There are 3 methods for doing so: launching out of a torpedo tube, out of a vertical ICBM launch tube, or from a custom-designed unit either in the sail or mounted on the hull. The U.S. Navy has recognized the need for more advanced littoral combat capability to counter growing area denial asymmetric threats that this type of vessel could provide. The German Type 212 submarines have the capability to launch UAVs. In fiction, the following is a list of fictional submarine aircraft carriers that have appeared in media. The Overseas Macross Zero featured the submarine aircraft carrier Auerstadt as the principal combat vessel for anti-UN forces operating Valkyrie fighters and supporting amphibious operations. The Torpedodanen from Full Metal Panic is a submarine capable of launching attack aircraft and armed slave combat mecha. It was depicted in the series as discarded Russian technology. The Rimfaxi and Synfaxi from Ace Combat 5, the unsung war launch UAVs, F-35C fighters, and Sea Harriers from launch tubes. The PC game Crimson Skies features HMS Barracuda, a British submersible capable of launching Peacemaker fighters, that is later destroyed. The PC game Supreme Commander has an experimental submersible aircraft carrier, the Atlantis, for the United Earth Federation faction. Novelist G. Harry Stein wrote the Starsea Invaders science fiction series featuring the SSC Venus Shenandoah. In the Star Trek novel Strangers from the Sky, the CSS Delphinus was a submersible multi-role ship of the 2040s. The British television series UFO included Skydiver, a submarine with a supersonic fighter mounted on the bow. The television series Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea featured the nuclear-powered Seaview, which could launch a saucer-shaped, nuclear-powered, supersonic flying sub. The 1988 Commodore Amiga video game F18 Interceptor features a fictional Soviet submarine aircraft carrier as the point of origin from where MiG-29 and Su-27 launch attacks against the San Francisco Bay Area.